This is the Fitchburg Historical Commission. This is October 28th, 2021. We have a quorum, and we are being recorded by FATV through the Zoom connection also. So if, with everybody's consent, why don't we move on to the item, which is update and endorsement for the Fitchburg Trustees of Public Burial Grounds proposal to nominate several Fitchburg cemeteries as local historic places. And maybe if, I believe, maybe as an introduction, if members of the burial ground trustees, if you introduce yourself and maybe present your current information.
Yeah, so I'm Judy Perla, I'm the chair, and this is Michelle Shibarasi. We're part of the subcommittee that is doing this preservation work.
Very good. And I believe the question, we had met in August. You had said you would like to nominate several of the Fitchburg burial grounds to highlight their historical significance. And I believe there's a list of 6 total burial grounds, that 6 or 7 that the trustees have responsibility for. And the question that in your letter that you sent to us from your meeting, your September meeting, is that there were some concerns about which ones would be sent to the City Council for their endorsement, and along with our endorsement, along with your request to City Council on these. And I think the question is whether these are going to be designated local historic districts or landmarks, if you will, or if they're going to be presented as nominations to the National Register of Historic Places. Maybe Judy, if you can maybe talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I'm gonna let Michelle answer that question for you, but since we talked to you at our last gathering at the Historical Commission, we did ask you for all 6 cemeteries to be considered historic sites. But as the trustees gathered again, we decided to change our approach a little bit, and Michelle will go ahead and explain to you why we chose to do that.
So unless I'm wrong, I learned from the people at MHC that there is no list of historical places for Massachusetts. They use the list of local historic districts to create a list, but they don't have a designation. So there's not a local, a state, and a federal National Register designation. It's just local and then federal National Register. So in order to be able to have the opportunity to apply for MHC grants and their matching grants, we did a lot of research on them and what the opportunity might be. But that aside, in order to qualify, you have to at least have deemed a place locally historic to apply for those state funds. So that was the reason why we were doing it. If, the whole process of getting on National Register was sort of like totally separate. We weren't necessarily planning on trying to do that at this point. It was all based on just, dealing with this first step. And, but once we Judy read quite a bit of the binder that comes from MHC regarding all the restrictions on how, repairs or any kind of change to the cemeteries would take on this like extra responsibility that we believe will just cost a lot more money, engineering and materials and all of that. And there is no money to do anything. So we felt that, for even reasons I'm not sure today, we felt that doing the 4 non-working historic cemeteries, some of them could benefit from and better fencing. So for those 2 reasons, we thought, well, if we can get some money for better fencing and security for those areas, then what, because we're never going to be burying more people there again, we're not going to be expanding them. So that kind of cost to meet the historic deadline guidelines would not need to be, wouldn't be an issue. So with Forest Hill and even Laurel Hill, they've already started to put fencing there already, and they've got a good portion of it done. So if we make that a historic district now, then maybe that fencing won't even qualify. And so it's just a little messy, and because there's so much ambiguity and there's fewer and fewer funds all the time, we're just trying to be really cautious and not tie our hands. So basically that's why we're thinking just the smaller cemeteries that are, the oldest really, and then see how that process goes. And
So you're saying 4 instead of 2?
Instead of 6.
4 instead of 6?
Yeah,
okay.
right.
Okay. And who's putting up the fencing at the 2 cemeteries?
Yeah, but you said Laurel.
Laurel
was-
Hill has been getting fencing for, in a few.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the
The
question.
Laurel
city-
Hill's fencing, has it been like 2 stages now or 3?
Oh, no, the expansion that you're speaking of?
No, this fencing for Laurel Hill, the fence.
Oh, the fencing, sorry, we're on phase 4. We've just completed phase 3 at Laurel Hill. If you approach Laurel Hill from Laurel Street, you'll see that there is a new fence that was put there a few years back. And then if you approach Laurel Hill from Rollstone Street, South Ave and North Ave going up, which is the entrance into Laurel Hill, those both have had new fencing put up. North Ave is a recent one we just did. Now we're in phase 4. We have to get quotes again from a fencing company along Rollstone Street, where the wall is and the entrance that you drive into is just a chain across there. So we just talked about this at our meeting. I live there, so I go by that way a lot, and the chain was down and a car was coming out of Laurel Hill. So I circled around, went back, put the chain up. That chain is not supposed to be down. The only access to that cemetery by motor vehicle is that particular area. So there's a wall, I believe it's a granite
It is.
wall, big
Yeah.
stones. It's been there forever. But on top of that, we now want to put a fence and then a gate, like we did on the north side. So that will be protected, and usually the police department has access because they do a surveillance every now and then. We're looking at possibly working with the police station to acquire a camera system.
Mhm.
It's quite expensive. We've had one quote of about $38,000. We're hesitant only because what is the end result? How is it going to deter anybody? So we catch you at the cemetery. Can we prosecute you? How do we know who you are? So we're just in the developing stage of that. But the fencing would be the 4th phase right now. That's what we're looking to do at Laurel Hill.
So Michelle, you said that you didn't think because it was in an advanced stage of fencing, you wouldn't qualify?
Well, I mean, I haven't looked into finding out exactly what kind of fence spec has to be used. So let's say, offhand is, and this is why it takes time to figure this stuff out, but if, for instance, the fencing has to be wrought iron, right?
Mhm.
And we're using what you see as fake wrought iron, which is really just,
Right.
it's not plastic, but it's just, metal.
Mhm.
And so maybe that type of fence wouldn't qualify as a true historic renovation. So now you're spending, enormous money for a fence. And so let's say the right fence costs $50,000, and you'll be lucky if you get $50,000 as a grant.
Mhm.
So let's say you only get $10,000 as a grant, but now you're stuck buying the $50,000 fence. But the $10,000 that you would have spent, because a lot of the stuff is matching too, most of it is. So if you got $10,000 to spend, you might get $20,000, but the fence is $50,000. Where we just need $10,000 to maybe do phase 4 now, you know what I mean?
I do.
And so, and then there's no extra administrative requirement from Jacqueline, the superintendent, who's already well overworked. And then it doesn't require engineers and people in town to get involved and matching grants and all that complication. But there was still a thought that maybe we should be at least putting some of the smaller, older ones on, because maybe there is an opportunity to get enough fencing for those tiny little ones, and maybe it would make sense. But, the more I talk and think about it, I'm scared to make any of them historic, because I just don't know if the funds are really there.
Well, but if they became, I don't think we've had a request for this, but if they became a local historic site, maybe each one of them was a local historic site, we wouldn't be inclined to get involved in the nitty-gritty of what they were doing, would we?
No, well, you can answer that question on your own,
Yeah.
and maybe Keith has an answer, but from what I've been reading,
Mhm.
nothing can get done unless the historical commission, not the historical society, but
No, the commission.
the commission deems the site historic.
Oh, okay.
Once you deem that site historic, so let's say Dean Hill,
Mhm.
which is way up in the
I-
boonies.
Right.
And, a lot of people go up there. It
Mhm.
has no fencing. It's
Well-
just got stone walls, let's just say.
Right.
I'm using that as an example. Let's say we want to fence it in,
Mhm.
or we want to put back the bronze entrance gates or something of that sort.
Oh, sure.
Okay. If we don't deem it historic, then we can't go for grants.
Okay.
We could not deem it historic and then try to get the money from the city
Mhm.
to replace
I
those. So I'm just using that as an
Yeah,
example.
yeah.
And we felt that the 4 cemeteries that we're asking for to be deemed historic are the older cemeteries, South Dean, Hartwell, and
And they're interesting. I just, this is an aside, and I don't mean to get off the subject, but Don probably doesn't know them, and it would be, I think, and I'd love to see them again,
that's what we were just talking about.
if we could maybe do a tour.
What we,
It's interesting to look at the grave sites. I
well,
used to do that.
they're hard to get at.
Yeah, I know.
They're way out you have to walk.
Yeah,
up a
yes,
hill,
I know.
One of them. One only has 3 graves. I believe that's the Hartwell Cemetery. That was a family plot that the city had to take once the family was no longer
Gone.
there. It was, and I believe, are they Revolutionary? There are veterans buried there again.
Well, just one, just Mr.
One,
just-
Yeah.
the husband, yeah. So that's why we sort of changed our letter to ask about just including those 4 cemeteries. Let's see how it plays out for historic purposes.
Mhm.
Evaluate them, see what we can do to keep them upgraded.
Mhm.
And if we can find the grant money or find city money even, doesn't necessarily have to be a grant money. It could come from the city, a one-time appropriation of free cash or something if it isn't extreme dollar-wise.
You also, one of the thoughts I had is looking, I don't imagine Hartwell would have anybody connected to someone in the city now, but I might be able to identify people who might be interested in helping with fencing. You know what I
Well,
mean?
this is the other thing. We as trustees, because we're volunteers like yourself, we're deemed employees of the city. So we can't fundraise. We can't ask for money. So if you could, that would be helpful. We do know there's a Wallace Foundation, there's a
There's a Crocker,
Crocker Foundation, and so,
and there might even be assignments, I'm not sure.
yeah, Simon's, right. So that's another avenue that we can research later, but we thought that this has been, people before us have tried to do this and only get so far.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, they stop.
We think it's the same reason.
So I think the reasons of what we're finding is that we'll be restricted in what we would like to do. Because if we get on a state Massachusetts Historic Commission list,
Designation.
then that big book with all the restrictions comes into play. So this is why these 4 cemeteries have been sitting there for years and years and years. And they do go up and clean the graves and clean the downed branches and all that, the cemetery crew that works for Jacqueline. And they put the flags up every year for the veterans. And in years past, when we had the Friends of the Historic Cemeteries, which was a volunteer group, Joy Contos did a wonderful presentation up there at Dean Hill about the veterans and the people buried there. But we were a volunteer group, so we could do it. That group is disbanded, so. So we would just like to see if we could at least, I guess, test the waters with these 4 cemeteries with your approval. And
I certainly think it would be a great idea.
Well, Keith,
well, you had approved it. I wrote in my notes at our meeting. Correct me if I'm wrong. This was, I think, the August meeting that we were here, right? Ellen, you did ask the Historical Commission to pre-approve the request to nominate cemeteries as historic places. The motion passed with the 6 cemeteries, so I guess we'll have to alter that to maybe just ask for the 4.
Okay.
Okay, as local historic places under the condition that Hartwell and the Form E that Michelle had to rewrite, and I believe she did do that and give it to you guys, right?
Well, that's the other thing, the only reason why we were gonna try to do it was to be able to qualify for MHC grants. And you have to be on the local historic district, but you don't really need a Form E. Form E is technically if you want to be looked at to be nominated for the National Register. But even so, because someone had already submitted the Form Es, the architects in 2000,
Right.
they're kind of in limbo, they're just sitting there, but they haven't gone forward, and I believe it's because there was no local designation. So you have to start there, and then they'll be considered. But I feel like, the National Register is going to even be more restrictive than possibly Massachusetts. So, I guess for right now, the big question is, do we have to have more expensive fencing other than what we've been using at Laurel Hill?
I don't see why.
Let me, if I can, get a little bit, our current commission members have not done this. The ones on our current commission have not nominated things for local historic district. In the past, the commission and the city has created one local historic district, which is Monument Park. And a local, with the word local in it, historic district means that it is governed by the local historic district commission, which is our commission's second duty. We are a combined commission. We are a Fitchburg Historical Commission, and we also are the local historic district commission, the local historic district commission. And that is just for Monument Park at this point. And it is, I'm giving this as just kind of background, just so you kind of we all kind of understand, as much as I understand anyhow, of what the difference is with it. We have the inventory forms that Michelle is working on and you've all kind of worked on. These are just recording documents of assets that the city has, and the Mass Historical Commission keeps a file of those, and we can update those like we're perhaps thinking of doing. So I'm a little concerned, just one, because we haven't done this in recent history, of declaring something a local historic landmark or district. And I'm not sure if landmark or district, if there's any difference in designation. A landmark would be a singular, and a district usually has more than one entity or building or structure in it. And the cemeteries are kind of quasi, it's a lot of landscape with maybe one building or two and lots of tombs and headstones and things. So that's the local historic district. And it does have, it is governed by our local historic district commission, which is again, our commission in our second iteration. And we will have to follow certain rules and regulations that we haven't really set up yet, because we haven't, and we're in the process of doing that, particularly for the Monument Park Historic District, as the library is going to be updated, and perhaps the courthouse is going to be, the old courthouse is going to be sold and perhaps used for another purpose, et cetera. So we, as the kind of the overseers, as a local historic district, the buildings in that district are under our control and our purview, and using things like National Park Service designations for restoration or changes to any of those buildings, et cetera. And exactly how fencing and things would come into that, we would have to rule on that, as you know, if it became a local historic landmark, like you say. This is my opinion anyhow. I'm not speaking for everybody on the commission. You would have to, once it became a local historic district, as you mentioned in your letter, it would have to come before our local historic district commission to approve any changes you would do like that. Any major changes, obviously maintenance, et cetera, is fine. So things perhaps like fencing or whatever, you would almost have to get our approval on that officially. This is my take of what that designation would be. If with whatever designation you have, let's say you went, the opposite might be to put in for National Register designation, which is really a recognition of the historical significance of a particular site, like all 6 of our historical cemeteries, or other buildings, like the Monument Park Historic District is also a National Register district. We also have the Crocker Field National Register district that includes the grandstands and the field house and the fencing and kind of all of those things. That isn't under our local control. It's just recognized as a National Register treasure, if you will, just like Monticello is and Mount Vernon and other things. They're just recognized as historically significant. And sometimes there's a sign put up, et cetera, to get so that the public understands the historic significance of these. When in my past experience, I was a practicing architect in years past, and we acted as consultants for people with historical buildings, and we actually helped with getting grants from the Mass Historical Commission, matching grants, if you will. Like you say, they're up to $50,000, and quite often it's less than that, depending on what the state budget for that particular year's funding grants are. When the application is submitted to Mass Historical, let's say for a fence, for matching grants for a particular fence, for any of the burial ground, it doesn't have to be a local historic district, but in your grant application, you do need to put, explain what you're doing, and generally, having something appropriate. They're not going to give you funds for a plastic PVC fence. They might give you funding for the powder coat black enamel metal fencing, like you have your new ones at Laurel Hill. They might not fund a chain link fence, though. So they would still review the kind of the quality or the historical appropriateness of whatever it is that you're asking for the matching grant. So you're asking Mass Historical Commission to match your funds. They're going to say, what are you doing? And you're going to present to them, what the particular material is, and it, depending on their ruling on it, and not the local, so you would just have one. If you're going for matching grants, if this is one of the reasons that you're going after this, you could skip a step by not having it as a local historic district, and not having us take a look at it. But if it were just even nominated for National Register, I think the Mass Historical would certainly consider it for matching grants, as long as they would think that, okay, this is a good quality material you're using. This gate that you propose for this cemetery, or let's say Hartwell or West Street, or whatever it is that you're looking for matching funds, they're going to, they won't probably fund it unless it meets kind of historical criteria, whether it's cast iron or something that is upholds the quality, or it's certainly not distracting from the historical assets that are at the particular, let's say, cemetery or burial ground. So I guess my point is, local historic district, in my opinion, singular, and I'm not speaking for the commission as a whole, I believe that it would have to come before the local historic district commission, which is us in a different iteration. We're a combined commission. Then you would have to go to, then apply for the matching grant, saying, okay, the local historic commission approved it. And then kind of any major things you would do that weren't just repairs, you would have to come before our commission, and a little bit of red tape with that happening. It's kind of a second look, making sure that the city's historical assets aren't treated improperly. But to kind of, the other option is just to make the application for a National Register, which would, I think, allow you to apply for the matching grant funding, which is usually up to $50,000 in matching funding. But they're going to kind of oversee, and they will have, they're just not going to let you put up any fence and give you a grant for it. They want to see, because you're in competition with lots of other communities, who gets the funds for that particular year, because they have a limited amount. You want to make sure that the quality and the reasons for your funding stands out as being, good quality things that you're doing. If you were replacing the siding on a building, or replacing a masonry stone in a mausoleum or something like that, they would, as an example, they would want to make sure that it meets the historical repair standards usually set up by the National Park Service. So, and Is that questions on what I'm saying from anybody?
Well, yeah, I understand what you're saying. Maybe Michelle can, so I guess what we're asking for is just a historic status. Are you considering historic status, historic sites or landmarks? Is that kind of the same thing? As just a historic status would still be considered a historic landmark or a historic site?
I think I want to clarify that through Mass Historical. I'm not quite sure. And maybe we can jointly do that on a phone call or something like that. So we're both asking the right questions, or, I'm not asking the questions, that you or Michelle are in on the question with me. I just don't want our recommendation going through City Council. And City Council originally approved the Monument Park Historic District, and that is done through a City Council decree. If we're just looking for endorsement saying, yes, these are good historical assets in the city of Fitchburg, and we're not making it a local historic district. You mentioned that in your letter, or your recent letter, as a historic district, and which kind of, I just want to make sure that calling it a landmark, a local historic landmark, is not the same thing as a local historic district.
We did meet with Tom Skorowski, the Economic Development Committee. Tom
Director.
Skorowski, he's the director. This was a few years back when we kind of started this process before Michelle came on board. And to your point, Moran Square was deemed historic
District.
because of the buildings, and there was a bunch of other things that whole area, just like Monument Park, you said that, and the Upper Common. But
Okay.
these aren't really historic districts, because he tried to explain that to us.
Yep.
But the cemeteries are spread out over the city. So if they were all in one, say, similar area, then that would be a historic district. But because the cemeteries are spread out within the city, they wouldn't qualify as historic districts. They would qualify as a historic status or a historic site or landmark. So
this is unfortunate, but there is, whenever it has the word local in it, I just want to make sure that it doesn't mean that it comes under control, for your sake, that it doesn't come under control of the Historic District Commission. The Moran, as an example, Moran Square is a National Register historic district. Through Tom, et cetera, kind of helped this happen. And obviously Ellen was very involved in this. In the beginning, getting this rolling is getting this area, which is several buildings, as a National Historic District. And with that designation, private owners in there can actually, it is documented, and anybody can kind of find out the history of these buildings, because it's kind of all of the buildings that are included in the district are all recognizable, and it's all in a document saying what the past history of these are, such as the plumbing supply building and the old fire station, et cetera, that are all part of the Moran Square Historic District. It is not a local historic district. It's a National Register Historic District. There are, and Crocker Field is a National Register Historic District. And that kind of the end of your burial form has that National Register designation paragraph that you can put those things in that give it that recognition. And indeed, we're endorsing it as historic, and the city did, although the Historical Commission did not endorse Moran Square originally when it was put in. I believe the city did, and I'm not sure if the city council voted to
I should
that.
remember.
So, and so just to clarify, I think we'd still be happy to certainly endorse the historic qualities of these all or four of the burial grounds, whichever you prefer. I just want to make, I think for your sake, I don't think I want to make sure that the word local designation does not put it into a historic district unless that's what you would like it to be. There can be an individual building as a historic district, and I would think an individual cemetery could be a historic district also, but whether it's local or if we're talking more of the federal.
Well, I don't
Well,
think that's.
So
what
the federal part I assumed was nearly or possibly more restrictive with any kind of process and materials. So
Getting it recognized, but it kind of on the way. So we can still, I think we can still try to proceed. What I'm recommending is that we clarify just before we start this that it's not going to turn into a local historic district just because the word local is in there. And that's just something I think that we should clarify. And maybe we can do this in the next, within the next week.
We have this brochure. Tom Skorowski gave us this brochure. There's a difference. Maybe I should have presented this to you. There's a difference between local historic district and National Register district.
Right.
Okay, so our cemeteries don't fall under any of these.
No.
Because under the National Register district, it says listing in the National Register recognizes that the area is important to the history of the community, state, or nation, which yes, it would be, allows the owners of income-producing properties certain federal tax incentives for rehabilitation. Well, there are no owners. The city owns this land.
Yep.
Provides limited protection from adverse effects by federal or state-involved projects. That's under the national district. Under a local district, it says by establishing a local historic district, which we're not asking for a district because the cemeteries are not in a district. They're not local, they're not in proximity to anything that you could say, they're all off of River Street.
It's relative.
So River Street would be a district. They're spread out throughout the city. And then the community recognizes the importance of its architectural heritage and how vulnerable it is to inappropriate alterations without the local regulation. So under the local district, preventing inappropriate changes. Well, we're not trying to change anything. We're just trying to secure it. So it's kind of like a he said, she said kind of thing. It's like, okay, well, where does it really fall under? I understand what you're saying, Keith, and I understand that you don't want to jeopardize your commission, either commission, in any way that would cause, anything bad to happen to you guys or even to us down the road. I appreciate that.
Well, I think that we weren't expecting it to be a district. We were thinking it would be a site. So if I use the word district on my second letter, I did that by accident.
I don't believe that you did.
Yeah, I don't think you did either.
The people in Boston and Ben Haley's department said, I spoke to them a couple times, and the last time I spoke to them.
Oh, yes, you did, okay.
I told, I was trying to say to her, to someone who I talked to, I don't remember her name, might have been Kelly. But I basically was saying, you know, trying to clarify exactly the steps that needed to be taken. And I remember her saying to me, something to the effect of, don't bother sending in the forms because if you don't have the local historic district designation first, then what's the point of sending in the forms? Now, maybe somehow she misunderstood, but I remember her saying to me, basically, I had to do something else. But I can call and clarify, maybe she didn't understand what I was asking for, but I'm still afraid that by submitting the forms to MHC, it's gonna go to National Historic, whatever, and at that point, it has the same regulations, if not worse, than the local would put on it. So I was just trying to help find ways of getting money, but I said months ago when I did this report that it looked hopeless because any amount of money we could get was it was so much work that had to be involved, so many people had to be involved. And there's very tight deadlines as to when you can make the application, what is needed, how soon you have to follow a very strict calendar. Everything is so rigid. I thought, it's just easier for the city to write checks. It's just so much easier. But I still honor the fact that these sites are, you know, valuable and they are going to be taken care of. You know, everyone is passionate about taking very good care of them. But I'm not sure it's not a good return on investment to go after a $5,000 or $10,000 grant and put restrictions on the sites. So my personal feeling has been for months, don't even bother. But I'm only one person and I'm just trying to help.
Right. Well, what I wanted, and I apologize because I realized I wrote myself a note after the last meeting and I didn't follow through on my own note. Because I wondered if there was an opportunity for our commission to, select sites as her historic sites as opposed to a district, an historic site that based on the history of the site. And all you're asking for is to secure that site. If we couldn't do that, I mean, is there such a thing as a local historic site as opposed to a district?
Well, if I may, in my notes here, let's see, when I emailed that Ben Haley, when I emailed him, I asked that question. We are trying to determine if this site, I was speaking about Laurel Hill at the time, was ever declared a historic site. And we've tried to investigate this further, but have been unsuccessful. We'd appreciate any help you could provide us with. I attached the Form E cover sheet because back in 2000, when the city did that community-wide,
It identified important locations.
Laurel Hill and Forest Hill were included in that site, but Dean Hill and the other 4 cemeteries that I said were not. So we were trying, that's why we were trying to get information. So as a trustee board, we're thinking, okay, maybe we should just ask for historic determination on the 4 older cemeteries where we're not burying anyone. We're not, we're just trying to preserve what's there. And
Well, I
then,
think that the missing link is, which I think you on it, is maybe we don't have to make those sites local historic in order to be able to apply for an MHC grant. Because, but if we do, then obviously what Judy's saying is we would need you to make it a local historic site in order to get that money. But if it's not necessary to get a grant, then we can just try to go after that money. You know what I'm saying? That's really the crux of the matter, is that we aren't 100% sure anymore because people have all gone in circles.
yeah,
I know.
and
Do we
we haven't-
really
and we
need
haven't
it
done it.
to get MHC money? I was under the impression that we did. But either way, I don't want to work under the guidelines of, I mean, I think that everyone wants to do the right thing.
we want to do
But
the
why
right
make
thing.
it cost more money and time and resources for the city?
Mhm.
It's just easier to write a check, you know, or to raise money,
Right.
you know?
And the other thing too is in talking with numerous people in the city of Fitchburg, one fella said, you just don't want to do that. You don't want to declare anything historic because, and he gave the example of City Hall. Everything that you had to do here, everything had to be looked at and
Exactly.
looked at again, and all these different people
Right.
had to come in. And when we were at your last meeting and you were doing with Ben, the man from the architect that was doing the Oak Hill project
Yes.
up there, just to have windows put in, oh my goodness.
Okay.
So I guess that's probably why this whole thing never went forward years ago when the other group on the commission tried to advance it. So we're finding that maybe we don't want to have it deemed historic. We really don't know what to do at this point. And when we were here the last time, you know, you did approve sending a letter to the city council, but I guess Keith has a lot of questions because now if we deem it historic, is it a district? Is it a landmark? Is it a status? Is it a site? I don't-
One of our members, Sam Blair, has a question. Sam, do you want to ask it?
No, I don't have a question. I don't know why you
Okay,
thought I did. I'm just
Okay.
listening.
it shows a raised hand. Okay.
Just so you know, just to clarify, the only reason why we need any designation, site, landmark, district, whatever, was in our minds the only way to be able to apply for MHC grants. So if we don't even need that to ever entertain an MHC grant, then we don't need that designation of any kind.
Okay,
Um,
just being aware that Mass Historical Commission will want you to meet certain standards for the work that's being done. They will review it. And probably, you know, that's their job, to fund things that are going to preserve, you know, help a community with matching funds to help the community preserve heritage. So they're going to put on the same restrictions as a local historic district would put on to whatever that project is. If you were going to, let's say it was an old historic schoolhouse or something, and you wanted to take the clapboards off and put vinyl siding on it, they'd say, we're not going to give you matching funds for that.
Right.
If you restored the wood clapboards and repainted them, they would give matching funds for that, so long as it was done, you know, with similar types of material and so forth. So this is my experience and my past professional experience. When you go for matching funds, you're basically saying you're doing things in the historically proper manner to you know, convince them you get the funds. And with the grant, you do have preservation restrictions that go on that particular property then also. I think National Register status, whether or not you really want to go for it, is more kind of a prestigious to it, that if you ever did get federal funds or something like that to work on it, I think you would have to meet those particular standards again with National Register. But it does list those assets like Crocker Field, like Moran Square, which is Moran Square buildings, or Moran Square Historic District is all pretty much privately owned, and there are tax credit incentives for private owners. Crocker Field is owned by the city. The National Register designation for that did make it eligible for some matching funds in a couple different rounds that Ellen and her committee worked on to do that. It did have the designation, and they were able to get some matching grants, but they did everything pretty much by the book. When they repaired wrought iron fencing or iron fencing, or they repaired the grandstand, or portions of the roof of the field house or whatever, it did have to get, the specifications for it had to be blessed by the Mass Historical Commission to grant those funds for that particular project. It is a great thing to have, our historic resources, and our cemeteries are, by all means, all 6 of them are historic assets of the city. You and your previous commissioners have done a great job in securing these. I just walked through Laurel Hill and Forest Hill last week in the rain, and I was once again impressed by the wonderful quality of these things, the uniqueness of them to our community and to the heritage and the upkeep and everything that's happening in them. So any cemetery, and particularly Fitchburg cemeteries, are so unique, particularly the South Street, the Dean Hill and West cemeteries, which are the smaller pieces in them, but they're so important to any community's heritage, or the cemeteries are. So I guess my question, and again, if Michelle, you wanted to call them, and maybe we could make a conference call, or all 3 of us or whatever, just to clarify the local designation idea.
I'm calling them.
Then
trying
we'd be happy to go ahead. I just don't want it to fall into a historic district if you don't want it to be that.
Yeah, I will clarify just for the sake of us all understanding, because maybe in the future it will be good to know, and we'll just record it once and for all. So I don't mind calling him and getting very specific answers, but if I think that there's any chance that you would have questions for him, or whatever, if I'm sure he'd be willing to talk to us all, but maybe I can at least get feedback, send it to you, and let you know if there's still any uncertainty,
Right.
just to save time. But we can go from there on that. And then I just look at it and say that ultimately our goal was only to find money at all possible to help get things done, because there's so little money put towards the cemeteries. That was our only goal. And it's nice to have that status, but it's just nice, and we just need money. We don't need nice.
Well, yeah, if I can elaborate on that, it's like, we're only, the trustees' duties are to watch the money for the cemetery and how it's spent, but they have no money. So we're trying to preserve, Jacqueline has a budget, and she's very good at her budget. But all of these capital improvements that really she needs to do, like the mausoleum and an expansion of that cemetery, we're 5 years out, and then we're maxed out at our local cemetery. All of that, we don't even make the list on the budget to the mayor. And if we get on the list, well, guess what? We're not important. So there are other projects in the city that take precedence. So
You're-
we're trying to find a way as trustees to help her.
Put it in front of them.
And yeah, to get some extra money in to preserve and do the work that needs to be done. And this is why we took on this task, but I guess
I think it's easier to raise the money too, even through
We're,
other sources, it's
yeah,
just that
we're
we
at a-
can't do it.
we can't do it. That's the whole thing. It's
I
like,
can put out ideas, I can do things to help someone else, but we can't do it.
yeah. Right now, and you probably know this, we have Sally Cragen and the Stratton Players doing performances at the cemetery. But that's to help the Stratton Players. But she's incorporating Ball's Bluff, the Battle of Ball's Bluff, the Civil War. We have another one coming up November 13th, I believe it is, where they'll be doing the 15th, the Massachusetts 15th Regiment
Yes.
reenactment regiment will be there. So she's giving us a little bit of her entrance fee. There's no charge. It's free to the public, but if you'd like to make a donation, to her, to Stratton Players, that's what it's about. And people have been doing that. So things like what Sally's doing is okay. We can't do that.
Mhm.
And she donated $100 from her first performance to the cemetery trustees, so that was great. But, it's just, so she'd like to continue things like that, and we'd like that to happen. But it's kind of like a double-edged sword. We want people to know about our cemeteries, but we don't want people there after dark, destroying our cemeteries. In
Ed-
that
Ed-
catch-22.
Yeah, as a personal aside, I think that the black steel fencing at Laurel Hill over off of Rollstone is my opinion, is
Yeah,
very
have you-
appropriate. I think that it's, that's, very handsome looking, and it's probably fairly durable. It's going to be there for a while. Certainly better than putting up a chain link fence and things. So I think your choices have been good. I think
I think it
another,
is too.
Prior to fencing going up
I think
on
another,
Laurel Street, Yep.
we're talking over each other. I think another thing, when you submit your budget to, for budget considerations for additional things to the city, we would be happy to endorse, the particular things that you're going after, if that would help. We have no budget ourselves, we could contribute to it. But your budget for maintenance and things like that, by saying, preserving the heritage of our city, and if our commission can, also endorse that as budget items that you're putting on there, we would be happy to, in our role of preserving the heritage of our city, be happy to endorse items, things like gateways and things like that, without an official local historic district type of hearings and things like that. And as another thing that maybe we could do without getting into the official designations, but anyhow.
It seems to me if you're fundraising, you're not fundraising, but need to raise funds, you could declare historic cemeteries, and that has a certain value, historic cemeteries. Would it have additional value in order to raise funds if there was an official historic designation, such as historic site, as designated by the Fitchburg Historical Commission?
I don't know, because I think, we had talked before that families that have funds, organizations and whatnot, even just family funds that have so many relatives there, even if they don't live in Massachusetts. I mean, I think that no one's asked them for money, but I think that would be a good way. And then they don't need to be convinced that it's historic and significant, they
No,
know
no.
they're historic
Right.
and significant. So I'm not really sure. I think awareness is the biggest thing. The city needs to make the cemeteries a priority in some way. And, there's lots of ways of doing that, but creating more awareness on the need. And then,
So what have other communities with cemeteries done, historic cemeteries?
well, I did do a lot of research, many months ago, and the biggest money that towns use to maintain cemeteries comes out of the block grants.
Right.
So that block grant is divided up into lots of different things, which ties into salaries and different things. But if we could somehow transfer salaries to the basic, fund is not get paid for by the block grant, chunks of money could be used for the cemetery. But that is the most common way that people take care of cemetery expenses.
Yeah, what we found is you have to do some lobbying for the block grants.
Right.
You have to let people know.
Well, we did just
From
receive
other towns.
$25,000 from Representative Kuchmarek, who put in a grant for the state budget FY '22. He asked for $150,000 for restoration and or,
Fencing,
excuse me,
fencing.
No, there's no particular,
no, it was either restoration or expansion of Forest Hill
Oh.
Cemetery. And because he put in that word restoration,
Mhm.
because the expansion is dead right now, that's off the table. The state granted, he asked for 150,000, we got 25,000. Our problem now, and it doesn't really make any difference to you guys, but we have a DPW commissioner who's no longer here. And now the young acting DPW commissioner has no idea what this was for. So we meaning the trustees did a little digging, Diane did, basically came up with, oh gee, here it is buried in all this wording from the state, $25,000. We have a grant, but now we gotta use it, because if we don't use
You have a
it
date,
before
deadline,
June of 2022, we
lose it.
lose it, and according to the state rep, you don't wanna lose it, because then you'll never get anything
No,
again.
no.
So we're trying to utilize that money, maybe, hopefully, I've sent it on to the superintendent and to the commissioner, the DPW acting commissioner, and to Russell Karlstad, who's the facilities director now. He's doing an RFP for the mausoleum. Maybe he can use that $25,000 to pay for an architect or contractor or somebody. I mean, maybe it'll be more money, but who knows? At least he has that money that we can use. So that was one grant that we got and nobody knew anything about it.
Mhm.
So it's like, we always seem to keep butting our heads against the wall here. We don't make any progress. And to be quite honest with you all, I'm so frustrated. So this is why we're here before you, because we're hoping that if you at least could point us in the right direction. And I want to just be clear. So you want clarification on the designation of the word landmark, status, district, or site.
no, we really just want to find out if we have to have local historic status to even have the option of applying for an MHC grant.
And that as well, right?
Yes, well,
Okay.
So what does Salem do with their historic cemeteries?
That's what I was gonna do last
You're
month,
gonna-
but I promise you, yeah, I will. As a matter of fact, I was
Well, they have
I was gonna call you, Judy, and see if you wanted to go with me. We could go make an appointment with Jane Guy and get some of the
I
big
thought
stuff.
that you found out that's what they did use, is MHC grant money. I thought I read that that's where they got some of their money was from the MHC.
It was,
Oh,
they got
yes.
$125,000.
They've got no money. over
City
the
had
years.
to match it though, that's the
Right.
problem.
And the matching funds are really a challenge.
Yes,
Yeah,
really.
Because you're competing, unless you have, in Salem, historic, everything is paramount. So individuals might be willing to help and do things. But you have to, somebody has to be working on raising funds all the time.
this is what I was looking for. For Mary Jo Bohat, the Morris Square Historic district designation work involved $18,500 with a consultant firm, VHB.
Yeah.
Maureen Kavanaugh.
Venice Hangen.
It's important to keep in mind, however, another prior historic consultant had begun some of the property inventory work before disappearing, which caused the city to change horses midstream and go with VHB. Larry Kasaka dealt with Moran Square Consultant. It cost another $20,000 because they had to change in midstream. So this is the thing.
Yeah,
It's a, if you do
I'd be
the
glad-
district,
I'd be glad to talk to you more about that.
well, this is why I don't think we really can use the word district in what we're trying to do, but it seems to me, and I could be wrong, that this is where the past commission got and then said,
The heck with it.
the heck with it. It's just too much work.
Mhm.
Let's just continue on doing small repairs when we can and how we can. And never even, getting this matching grant money, because again, like you said, you get the $125,000 like Salem did. Now the city's gotta match that. Well, are they gonna match that?
Well, it all has to be, everyone, it all
They
has to
have
be
to identify
agreed upon in
before-
advance. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you have
Everything
to,
has to be in advance.
let me tell you.
It's a lot of work, I know.
I
I mean,
mean,
like I said, months
you're
ago,
almost-
I felt it was all hopeless and we should just stop. Just not worry about it, but, the ball got rolling and, and I just said, well, I'll support other people's decision, but I
So
don't think.
Keith,
it's a
if I
good
could
idea.
I want
ask
to be
you-
realistic.
then clarification, as I said, about those words, and then the local, what you said.
We're just going to find out, just for our own sanity,
Yeah,
do we need to have any kind of designation, regardless of the wording,
Right.
in order to be able to even consider MHC grants? To be able to.
Be
apply,
eligible.
to eligible to even apply.
Mhm.
We probably won't, but at least we can finally determine that tiny little piece that I thought I understood, but maybe I'm wrong.
Mhm.
okay, so we'll look into that, and then we'll
We'll get
we'll let you all know, and we'll be back. So I guess we don't need a letter of recommendation right now, right? That's what we
They
were
just said, really? They're coming back?
Well, I couldn't understand why we had to come back, because I
Yeah,
thought
I
when
mean-
we were here the last time, everything was in place, and you just wanted the updated form, and,
We're learning too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I learned today. Like, they don't know either.
okay,
But
so
that's okay.
that's perfect, we're
I
fine.
have lots of questions, but
Yeah.
we can't answer them here.
Right,
We have to do our homework.
So maybe there's a lot of people on television who are gonna watch this meeting, created more awareness about the cemetery problems, but I don't think there's
Oh,
anyone
geez.
watching.
I keep forgetting we're being filmed.
Oh, I forgot it.
People do it by accident.
By accident. Oh, goodness.
What do they do? They volunteer their time
Yeah.
and they care.
And the
All right,
the
well,
wheels
we don't
move
want to
slowly.
take any more of your time, because I know you have other things on your agenda to get to, but I'm glad that we at least came, and, now we have some more work to do on our end, and we'll get the clarification, and get it to you all, and we'll go from there and see where it takes us.
And we have some work to do on our end
Okay,
as well.
We just need to have patience, that's it, patience. Well, thank you very much.
thank you very, very
Thank
much
you.
for
Nice to
hearing
see
us
you
out
both.
today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Keith.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes, I will. Yes, I do. Thank you, Don.
Have a nice evening.
Thanks, you too.
Okay. What's next on the agenda?
Okay, we can go back to our original order, which is review and approve the minutes for the June 24th meeting. And I don't think we have those yet. I think, Ellen, you had some notes on that, and then your computer fried.
And I just want to apologize. My personal life has been a nightmare. And I haven't, hopefully things have settled down. I have a seriously ill son, but anyway, so I have, I intended to take notes. I've got my agenda with notes on it, and I promise you, and I think I owe you another one too.
No, I
I think I had a draft one.
I think that's it. The June one, we skipped July. And Megan has sent us a copy of the August 26th and the September 30th of this year meetings. And I think I can bring those up, or if the other members have seen it and have any comments, would you like to see that?
Well, I'm in the process of, I wish I could say to you that one of my kids is going to take me to Staples tonight. I put my dead computer on a chair so that everybody who comes into my house, it's just my family, there it is. I need a ride to Staples. And I'm beginning to feel bad about not getting a new computer. Or
Don't do that.
Huh?
Don't feel
No,
bad.
well, the thing is, there are also people, I have only 2 friends that I communicate that way with, but I can't do that even. Okay, so if you would send me what you have to my email address, and I'll get it when I get the computer.
Okay.
Okay. I'm pretty sure I have one, but I can't remember which one it is.
Okay. Yeah, they have been sent out, these last 2 anyhow. And if we want to table these until the next meeting, that's fine too.
Right.
All
Make a
right.
motion to table the dates,
Or the August and September meeting minutes.
and September. Okay, and we need to have October's, which I will do.
Okay. Thank you, Ellen.
Okay. What were the other issues? Because I do have one.
Okay, the next item number 5 is proposed Fitchburg Historical Commission rules and regulations. I've asked Sam if he would like to help volunteer with me to help take a look at these. We currently have no rules and regulations for our combined commission. We are a historical commission, and how we hold our meetings and processes and things, there should be some rules and regulations to kind of pass down to that we follow, and that kind of go forward and can be updated by the commission's own vote. We would file these with the city clerk once we create these. I'd sent out some copies of some samples that Mass Historical had from various commissions, Amherst, Brookline, I believe Falmouth were some of those. And I'm taking a look at particularly Amherst, and which is just the Historical District Commission, I believe. And Brookline has combined rules and regulations for both of their commissions, which is a combined commission as I read it. And I'm kind of partway through doing a draft of those.
Do you have the Salem one? Because I think I've kind of mocked that up. It follows what I think is appropriate for us. Do you
Okay.
have one of those brochures?
That's the brochure. I think I do have that. I'll take a look at that also. That has guidelines for the Historic District Commission in it. Let me make a
It's
note.
pretty comprehensive. Matter of fact, I was trying to, simplify it a little more. I haven't made much progress, but it does, at least from my understanding, it's pretty much what we do too.
Okay. Thank you. I will take a look at that one also. I don't know, Sam, have you had a chance to take a look at any of those samples or any suggestions?
Excuse me, was that a question to me?
Yes. Do you have any thoughts or suggestions on?
I looked at the rules and regulations from Brookline. They seem a little bit overdeveloped for us, but there might be a lot of useful stuff in them.
Yeah, I think if we compare several of them and kind of pick and choose the things that are, don't want to overdo it and make it too long, but make sure we have
Right.
things that kind of help us out if there's a specific situation we need to address.
Right.
So, okay, well, with your help, we'll kind of continue on that. Do you need a copy of the Salem ones also? Do you want me to send you a copy?
That would be good, yeah.
Okay, I'll send that to you also, Sam. And we can hopefully make a little headway before our next meeting that I think is in about 3 weeks from now.
Uh-huh.
All right, that sounds good. So that's kind of work in progress. Once we have some drafts for everybody to take a look at, we'll put them out and perhaps even maybe send them perhaps to the city solicitor to make sure we're doing things correctly. And Tom Swarovski said he would be happy to take a look at them also, as they're kind of our de facto department staff that helps us out. So next piece, item 6, is update on the proposed demolition delay ordinance draft. And I think Megan is working on that. She noted that she has a grant deadline that's looming and she couldn't make it to our meeting today. So we will table that, I believe, or I recommend we table that. Once we do have a demolition delay ordinance proposal, I suggest that we send it first to both our building commissioner and to the community development department for their initial comments on it before we then start lobbying to city council and perhaps other.
I would also suggest that you add the city solicitor.
Do that also, the ordinance, yes.
Got the building department, the community development department, and who else?
I think get their comments first, and then maybe we can get comments of selected city council representatives and anybody else. We think getting some backing before we actually make the formal.
Okay, so the building commissioner and the community development director are the two that are looking at them right now? Okay.
Excuse me. No one's looked at it yet.
Oh, okay.
I've lost my voice. So we don't have anything to send.
So what are the 3 that you have? The city solicitor, the building?
Building department, community development, and the city solicitor.
Okay, so who's the city solicitor?
God, I can't think of it. I'll get you his name.
Okay, and the building department?
I think right now the building department, no, it's the DPW commissioner.
Oh, that's the new guy?
Building Commissioner Mark Barbadaro. Barbadoro, excuse me.
Is he one of the, is he the one that is the acting person is taking his place for the time being?
No, that's the DPW, and the DPW doesn't get involved with permits for the buildings, so we would want to go with the building commissioner, who is Mark Barbadoro.
Right.
We don't have a draft ourselves, and we reviewed ourselves. I'm just saying that once we come up with a draft, I think we maybe looking at the process that we then send it to Tom Swarowski and Mark to make their comments on it. And perhaps the city solicitor soon thereafter, once we have it fairly tight, just to make sure we have our wording correct in the proper designations, it becomes a bylaw at that time with the city. So, and kind of this item number 7 is the stone wall preservation ordinance, which would be the same thing. We would send it to the building commissioner. Also probably and to Tom's department, the community development, that also serves I believe the planning board that does site plan reviews.
Yes.
That would be involved with perhaps developments or the wording of the Stonewall ordinance also. So kind of both of those we would send out to those probably similar people for prior review and endorsement if we can before we go before city council.
Okay, is the commission agreed on the latest version of the Stonewall ordinance?
I don't think I've seen it.
You haven't seen it?
And I haven't actually, because I haven't had a computer.
If there's a
Okay.
latest,
Are you
Yeah, well,
using
the latest is
iteration?
2 months ago, I think, because I was waiting for approval by the commission, but we didn't have a
A
quorum
quorum, that's right.
at the last
Right.
meeting.
Well, why don't we make that an objective on, an objective before our next meeting, make that a priority rather.
Yeah, so I just wonder if I should send out the version that I have now, or are there do people want to take another look at it before I send it out? I'll mail it as an attachment to
okay.
everyone,
Yes,
so you can take a look at
right.
it.
We look at what we look,
Right,
the first review, I remember discussions about that. But there's an additional amendment or something, is that it?
well, Keith had
Some recommendations?
some recommendations that I incorporated.
Oh, okay.
And basically, the point being, I did have it in there that this is not meant to supersede any other ordinance of the city.
Mm-hmm.
But I clarified that. I think I had a specific ordinance, it did not supersede this specific ordinance. And I think Keith's suggestion was it should be general, that it doesn't supersede any
Right.
other city ordinance.
No, it's the beginning.
That came from Tom Swarowski saying that there was a what's it called? Not historic roads, but
I should remember. I petitioned for it.
road view sheds, that existing stone walls on certain roads in the city actually did have some stone wall protection to them. So we just wanted to make sure it was coordinated with that. So yes, Don, if you could re-email it out and maybe
Email it out.
send a paper copy to Ellen if,
Yeah.
Okay?
Yep.
Will
and
do.
we'll review it for next meeting. Number 8, update on Oak Hill Road, building number 5, renovation permitting review. We had given some concerns and guidelines about the exterior window treatment that they were doing. They're coming up, basically they're keeping all the exterior windows as they are on building number 5, but they were putting backer panels, insulated panels behind maybe 80 or 90% of them. And the concern of moisture buildup and, perhaps increasing the rot behind the building or behind the windows or in the existing wooden windows needed to be addressed more. The architect designer is coming up with solutions for that. And we gave them kind of endorsement of their project on condition that their final detailing of that before they start construction gets our final approval. So they're working with the building commissioner to go ahead with the building permit, or at least up to the point where we can finalize, and they were going to do a mock-up of their proposed solution to keep the moisture level from getting too high behind these closed-in, backed up windows. So that's kind of ongoing, and they don't have final approval on that, and it's a work in process.
Yeah, they were talking about the drill holes, and our concern was that the holes into the wood would deteriorate. So then they were talking about putting something within the drill holes.
Yeah, to preserve it.
Protect the wood.
I thought that's what you had explained.
Right.
Because
And when they've come up with some refined new details on that, and we're waiting kind of for the final drawings of what they would do on that. And I believe the building permit will be held up until we give that final approval on it.
okay.
The next, number 9, review wording for historic site markers for the new housing development at the northwest corner of Blossom and Crescent Streets. And with consultation with Ellen and with the Historical Society, we were able to get some information from the text, The River and the City. I believe it is that Barbara Crocker had.
Yes, and City in the River.
City in the River. And the wording that I'd sent out in an email before was for their marker, site of Fitchburg's first meeting house, circa 1766, and later a brick schoolhouse on land donated by Thomas Cowden.
That's wonderful.
And this, there's another marker with, I believe, Thomas Cowden's name up on Pearl Street that shows him as an innkeeper and that probably owned this land down toward Blossom Street. And he ended up being the owner, and he purchased the inn that was up on Pearl Street and operated it. And I believe later had an inn closer down on Main Street. And he became heavily involved in the Revolutionary War and became a representative to, I believe, the state, it's a congressman or whatever. And he had a rank in the Revolutionary War also. But this was before he had any of these ranks and representative status. So donated by Thomas Cowden. And
That's
by
right.
the way, there's a big memorial in Laurel Hill Cemetery,
What's there?
a big obelisk with Thomas Cowden's name and recognition on that I just saw last week. So
Oh, that's wonderful.
yes,
It's been a long time since I've toured the cemetery.
I have a picture of the markings on that. So once you get to your computer, I'll send you a picture of it, Ellen.
No, thank you.
Okay, with the commission's approval, I'll send this on to Nick Pelletier, the developer on the property. So he has our final building. So if we can make a motion to accept this wording or any changes thereof.
The commission send our decisions related to the Crescent Street development to Nick Pelletier.
I second the motion.
Okay,
All those in aye.
Aye.
Approve.
any abstentions, any nays? Okay. Our quorum, we have approved the wording of this. I will send it and I will copy all the commission members on this with our official wording to Nick. You've been very patient. I think he came to us in May or June with this request. And so we finally have it. And thanks to the cooperation from the Historical Society also that had some interns doing some work on this. Number 10, update on the status of Monument Park repairs, coordination with Parks and Recreation. When we met with Nate LaRose, I believe in May or June, we told him we would share kind of our working documents with them and try to coordinate with them. He had mentioned in passing that they had some budget for fencing repair. And I tried to get a hold of Nate, I believe last month on this. He is out on family leave at this point and will be back in November in a couple of weeks. And I will touch base with Nate hopefully in a few weeks here on this and let everybody update this in the next agenda in November.
Excuse me, sorry. Do you have a copy of Lenny Laxo's plan?
I do.
You do, okay.
And Charles and I actually did some physical survey earlier this summer with some additional items that had shown up in the process. And as I mentioned, I believe in one of our earlier summer meetings, one of the things that Charles and I had noted, particularly along Main Street and along Wallace Avenue, I believe it is, that the new corrosion that was happening on the balusters, the vertical spaced posts, if you will, in between the main balusters or posts, that the deterioration seemed to be happening more at the base of these cast iron pieces, and particularly on the side facing the street. And my sleuthing or thinking is that it's possible these are highly traveled areas, and that the particular ice melt material that we're using on our streets, as it sprays up, hits that exposed side, settles down to the bottom of the balusters and gets into any small pieces, or soaks into the cast iron and causes the rust to develop more quickly on the street side, particularly these more used streets, than on the street on the east side and on the courthouse side, not as much traffic on it. This is something I'm thinking we perhaps bring up with DPW once we get this in. I did a little research and found there are some chemical types of ice melt that are less deteriorating to building materials and things like cast iron. And I believe also on the face of the Armory building that has brick that goes right down to the sidewalk level, that street salt used along these buildings, once it gets into the porous red brick material, and then tends to attract moisture into it more. And when there is a deep freeze with lots of moisture in these, it causes spalling the masonry materials also, but this could be a separate thing, particularly for the cast iron on Monument Park and for the brickwork on the armory and maybe the library building too, that has brick right down to the sidewalk. But it's, I think that's a little bit tougher brick than on the armory, but that's just an aside. As we get into the railing repair, I think we want to just speak with DPW, perhaps when we get a new commissioner, full-time commissioner, that we bring that up with the kind of maintenance programs and try to stay on top of that. Anyhow, that's again a work in progress in Monument Park. I want to talk with Nate on it and see if we can get a coordinated effort with Parks and Rec on this. Number 11 is update on the demolition of the Simon Saw and Steel. I believe the building is just about all down now, but the one thing that happened on September 20th, the time capsules were opened at City Hall, I believe. And according to Patrick Hare, the mayor's assistant, that the Simon Saw people wanted to donate the time capsules and their contents to the Historical Commission. I questioned him on that if they did not say Historical Society. In any rate, he said the Historical Commission. And I would like to propose a motion before our members here that that we vote to transfer the contents to the Fitchburg Historical Society. So that we're not the owners, we don't have storage.
Right. Well, I'll move that we vote to transfer the Simon's Saw and Steel time capsules to the Fitchburg Historical Commission
Society.
Society, excuse me. Thank you.
Time capsule contents.
Time capsule contents to the Fitchburg Historical Society for preservation.
I second the
I'll
motion.
second that.
Any comments? All in
And
favor?
second.
Aye.
Sam?
Yes.
Okay, good. So moved or so voted. And I will send that information to the mayor's office that I believe may still have them, and also coordinate with the Historical Society. Susan said that, yes, they would accept them, pending the condition and the mold qualities and so forth, that they didn't want to. Some of the stuff was in kind of bad shape, I guess. It had been kind of squished and maybe got damp, and they don't want to jeopardize the rest of their bringing in foul document eating molds and so forth into their society. So they would, on condition, accept them. So I will notify the Historical Society and City Hall.
With respect to what you were just speaking about, is there a process that could be used for all these documents? It's possible that they were exposed to dampness and moisture, but something that could be done at this particular time to make sure that they will be preserved?
I will I'll ask for feedback from Susan on that.
And I would offer to talk to a member of the Simons family if that was required, if that would make sense.
Okay, if there were additional costs to something like that.
Yeah, if there's some, I have no idea what it would be, but some application that could cover the various documents to be sure that, first of all, they're not going to expose the society to any kind of whatever mold or something, but also to preserve them, because they really were a very important industry here.
and having that and preserving that as as city document, if you will, through the Historical Society. So I will pass that on to Susan also, and I'll leave this item on the agenda for next month also.
Okay.
The second part of Simon Saw is that we know that there is a architectural industrial historian who is interested in doing some historic documentation of the design and architectural industrial design of the facility of the 1930s Simon's Steel and Saw facility. Ellen has volunteered to talk with some of the family members and perhaps a member of the Simon Saw administration, if you will, to share some of the history, perhaps with Sarah Wormel, and if we can get a understanding of who she might be able to get information from. She would be able to give a price of what her written documentation of this would be. And then we would look for some private fundraising, either through Simons or any other outside funding, not a city funded project that could make this happen. But the idea of recording the heritage of this particular unique industrial design, if you will, for the city's posterity. Just my thought. And we'll continue that into future meeting. I'll give you an update on it.
If you would put that on, include that on the agenda for the next time. I haven't gotten an answer back, so I pursue the answer.
Okay. Sounds good. Number 12, update on historic districts information, brochure map, information guide, signage, web posting, etc. The Fitchburg State University faculty-led student project coordination is ongoing this fall with the development of a brochure. There's a meeting scheduled for next Thursday for the subcommittee, which is Ellen, Don, Charles, and myself, for 2:00, and that's going to be a Google Meet meeting that JJ will set up. So I can make it, I believe.
And I put it,
make it, and if your computer's up and running, or perhaps we can.
I'll invite Don to come over with his.
Okay. So I will, just an update that is going forward, and the beginning mock-up of the brochure is going to be reviewed next week. So good progress. We have a couple more, maybe another month and a half to kind of finish that up.
If I could add something, Keith, we need to determine how we're going to represent, the districts, with a photograph. And so these are not set in stone, but these are just suggestions. For the Monument Park, I suggest that we use the monument, the wonderful monument. For the H.M. Francis district, the H.M. Francis logo, which is very representative of different features of his designs. The gate, the Circle Street gate at Crocker Field, which, if I remember correctly, has the Harvard University athletic facility gate. Whoever designed it chose to use some features of the Harvard College gate for their athletic field. And I don't have a suggestion at the moment for the Academy Street Historic District, the one that includes B.F. Brown and the old high school, the stairs, except if somebody would look at those stairs that connect Pritchard Street to Academy Street, they're really majestic. I'm sorry that the beautiful light fixtures disappeared, but I just wondered if those stairs might be represented, that could, a picture, a photograph of those. And then for Moran Square, the Spanish-American statue in Moran Square.
Not the diner?
Well, I thought about the diner, and by the way, I had an opportunity to go there today, and it's just wonderful. They've done such a beautiful job, restoring or redecorating the interior, and the outside looks wonderful, and they've added that nice planting area and seating area. That, I think that's it's unique. And the diner's in the district, it's recognized in the district. So.
Well, the photograph could perhaps be starting at the diner, the camera close to the diner side. The monument is middle distance, and the granite building block, the Warren block, I believe it's called, in the rear ground. So it could have all three of those things perhaps in a photograph.
We could ask Charles to take it, perhaps he would take a picture of, get an image of the three.
Yeah.
Diner, the statue, and the block building at the corner of Summer and Main. Summer and Lunenburg. No. Yeah, Summer and Lunenburg Streets. Okay, I'll get in touch with Charles.
Okay, and we'll discuss this more next Thursday too. So,
So if everybody wants to be thinking of appropriate images.
Okay, so that's next Thursday. Number 13, filling vacancy on the commission. I believe that I asked Megan, she had made contact with Nick Pelletier, a realtor, along with representatives from the American Institute of Architects, representatives from the Historical Society. One of our mandatory, quote unquote, membership should be a person select from 2 nominations from the local real estate board, if you will, for a member. So I think somebody as a realtor is, by our statute or being formed, is an important part. And we did originally have one back in 2007 when we started out again. We haven't had a realtor representative in it. So Nick was in today's meeting and he hasn't shown up. So I presume that Nick might not be interested. A proposal would be to go to the local real estate board. I'm not sure who they are, but ask for nominations, or maybe we could think of other realtors that cover our city that would be a valued member and also could be educational to the realty community about the historic assets of our community also. So if there are some thoughts on that, I think we should fill this vacancy sooner than later. My suggestion only is that we should go for, or at least make an effort to get a realtor first as one of our 3 mandatory. We have AIA representatives and we have
Keith, is it really mandatory? I thought it was a suggestion.
let me just have.
I haven't looked at the ordinance for a long time.
Let me read. as I'm reading from the city code that's listed on our website, it says membership, required membership shall include where possible,
There you go.
where possible, one member chosen from two nominees submitted by the local historical society. B, one member of two nominations submitted by the chapter of the American Institute of Architects covering the area. C, one from two nominees of the Board of Realtors covering the area. So these are required membership will include where possible. Then it goes to, in addition, so that's 3 members. In addition, the commission shall include 4 other members so that it will represent a variety of organizations and individuals whose interests are allied with the historic preservation if possible, and should include, these are the other 4, a lawyer who can help the commission in interpreting Historic District Act. B, a professional historian or historical historian who can supervise continuing research on the historic district and can provide statements on the significance of individual buildings where necessary. C, a member from the planning board who can ensure cooperation between planning and the historic district. D, a resident or owner of property in the district. This would be the Monument Park Historic District. This can be waived and a substitute made if a number of residents or individual owners within the district or districts is small. And then it goes on to say what the terms of it is. So kind of the 3 required ones are Historical Society, AIA, and Board of Realtors, again, where possible. So, and do we need to make an effort, I guess, on the Realtor? We have made one effort. And then a lawyer, professional historian, which we have, a planning board member, we do not, and a property owner, resident or property owner. Charles is almost in the district. He's off by a boundary line, I believe. So thoughts on this?
All right. I'll take that on if you would like. So I have this. I'll have to find out who is the head of the real estate board, but if Nick if Nick is interested, he really covers that. Yeah, he also, he doesn't live within the district, but
Oh, it's
that's the district.
somebody that so we're talking about our combined boards also, or commission, I guess. So the membership doesn't have to live in the local historic district, and obviously is representing the community at large.
That's me. I hope.
Yeah, and the same with the realtors and the architects. These people don't have to live in the historic district. There's very few residents that do live in the district, but one of the members is possible resident. But on the commission, and they're really somewhat referring to the local historic district commission, which we are a combined commission. And we're going to have to following those duties soon as the library makes its addition and as the courthouse is being sold. I think that's why we should get our ducks in a row with our design guidelines and our operation rules and regulations, and getting a full membership, obviously. So if others agree, Ellen said she would look into local realtor organizations and for possible nominees. from them, or we just go directly to them and then make that recommendation to the mayor, who would then pass it on to city council.
Right. And also, I'll check with the city clerk for, the timeframes for appointments and all, because I don't know that any of us have been reappointed.
Yeah,
We have?
yeah.
Oh, okay.
Our past city clerk, Mary Alderetti, has resigned her position. She's gone to Lexington, I believe. So the assistant town clerk is taking over at the moment. Just for your information.
Okay. Thank you. I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that.
Okay, so that's on the vacancy. Any new business others would like to bring up?
No,
No.
Okay, our next meeting is Thursday, November 18th. That's a week before Thanksgiving. We will hold it in the West Meeting Room. And the December meeting, we've decided to have that on December 16th, which would be roughly a month from our November meeting. Kind of avoiding the holidays a bit. So just mark your calendars for those. And realizing it's not the last Thursday in November and December.
No, that's,
November
Right.
18th and December 16th. So
okay.
anything else? Okay, I'll send the Salem Historic District information to Sam, so you have that to take
Okay.
a look at also. And Don's going to be resending out the revised Stonewall ordinance for everybody to take a quick look at. And we will try to act or move these on to the next stage at next meeting. So
All right.
thank you.
Stay well, everybody.